All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to break down the arguments from a viral critique of CNN's recent war reporting from inside Iran. And this critique makes some pretty serious accusations. So let's get into it.
And there it is. This is really the heart of the whole thing, the central claim we're going to unpack today. The source is essentially saying that because of how CNN got its access inside Iran, its reporting wasn't just journalism. It was basically acting as a mouthpiece for the Iranian government. So how do they even begin to build that case? Okay, first things first. Let's look at the actual evidence the source uses to try and back this up. It really all kicks off with one fundamental question, and that's a question about access.
So the source finds this really, really significant. Out of all the Western news networks, only CNN got the green light from the Iranian government to report from inside the country during the conflict. And that begs the question, right? Why them? Why only them? Now, this is where you can see the tension. On one hand, you have CNN on the air stating very clearly that they have full editorial control over their reporting. But on the other hand, the source is skeptical. It's asking, okay, but what were the unspoken terms? What kind of deal had to be made to get that exclusive access in a country that, doesn't exactly have a free press? To build its case, the critique then zooms in on one specific report from CNN to really challenge its credibility. And this quote right here, this is exactly how the source describes a CNN story about the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. So here's the deal with that report. CNN cited an internal assessment from the Defense Intelligence Agency, that's the DIA, and claimed that Iran could potentially shut down this critical shipping lane for anywhere from 1 to 6 months. And the way the story was framed, it really made it sound like the U.S. administration was completely blinded by this. But yeah, the Pentagon came out and pushed back on this hard. A chief spokesman went on the record calling a 6-month closure an impossibility. And for the source of this critique, that rebuttal is a key piece of evidence that the original report was, at best, misleading. So the source's argument here is basically that the CNN report took a worst-case scenario and presented it completely out of context. It argues the idea that the administration would be surprised by this is, and I'm quoting here, patently ridiculous. I mean, especially when you consider how focused they've been on energy prices and the fact that the U.S. military has been planning for this exact scenario for decades. Okay, so that's the what of the argument. Now, the source tries to get into the why. It shifts gears to speculate on what might be happening behind the scenes, what motivations could be influencing the network's on-air talent and their editorial choices. And the number one factor the source points to, a massive corporate change hanging over the entire network and its staff, but simply the arrival of a new boss. So, the long and short of it is, CNN is about to be sold and merged with Paramount. The source describes the incoming boss, David Ellison, as being pro-MAGA, meaning aligned with Donald Trump's political movement. And the claim is that this has created a ton of uncertainty, with some hosts allegedly worried that their critical style of journalism just won't fly with the new ownership. And this is where the source connects the dots. The theory is that some of the changes you see on air are a direct result of that pressure. The source calls it a desperate attempt for ratings, suggesting that hosts are trying to reinvent themselves to look more like independent media, all in an effort to impress the new guys in charge. And here is a perfect example of what the source is talking about. It points to this moment where host Jake Tapper started broadcasting from his personal office, calling it an experiment. The source describes this whole thing as utterly bizarre and holds it up as proof that hosts are actively trying to change their whole vibe. So to wrap all this up, the critique kind of zooms out. It connects what it claims is happening at CNN right now to a much larger historical pattern, and it raises some big questions about media, trust, and influence, especially during a time of war. The source draws a direct line from what's happening today all the way back to the Vietnam War. The argument is that we're basically seeing history repeat itself. Just like Walter Cronkite's reporting on the Tet Offensive supposedly undermined a winnable war back in 1968, the source argues CNN is doing something similar today by misrepresenting the conflict with Iran. And the source actually has a name for this whole phenomenon, the Cronkite effect. It defines it as that specific moment when a media figure who everyone trusts declares a war unwinnable. When that happens, public opinion can shift dramatically, and the source argues that this can happen no matter what the actual facts are on the ground. And all of this really builds to one final, big-picture question that the source wants you to think about. It uses its analysis of CNN and these historical parallels to ask something much bigger about the future. In a major global conflict, what role would a press that it considers hostile to the national effort actually play in shaping the final outcome? It's a heavy question, and it's one the source leaves for us to consider.